The day I closed my eyes for the last time, heavy snow blocked the doors. Not a single soul from the Marquis of Jinbei's estate came to see me off. The only thing by my side was that old pillow I brought from my maiden home. When I was 16, the bridal sedan carried me into the Marquis's estate. When the bridal veil was lifted, Lu Yunzheng's face turned from anticipation to disappointment. He took 3 steps back, his expression filled with shock.
How is it you? Where is Qinghe?
This single sentence made me realize my situation. He said I was not worthy of the Marquis's estate, disliking me for not knowing proper etiquette. Not long after our wedding, he left me neglected in the back courtyard, withholding charcoal for the winter, and even the servants dared to give me attitude. Out of anger, I smashed his inkstone. During our argument, I accidentally fell, a dull pain throbbing in my temple. Later, when I was pregnant, I discovered an old sachet he had hidden away. It was a token of love from my cousin, Guru Yan, embroidered with the character Yan. In a fit of rage, I burned the sachet. During our struggle and argument, I lost my footing and fell. My body was ruined after that, and I feared I could never conceive again. The coldness of that day is something I remembered for the rest of my life. He stood on the steps, his lips trembling as he said,
I didn't do it on purpose.
I believed him. He couldn't even be bothered to do anything to me on purpose. From then on, my heart was like dead ashes. We faced each other with such coldness for a lifetime, wasting away from youth to old age. Until at last, we didn't even have the strength to look at each other with mutual disgust. On my deathbed, he didn't even come to take a single look. Just as well, as my final thought flashed by, in a daze, I seemed to see my 16-year-old self. Waking up from a dream so long, it felt like living a whole lifetime. It was as if fate had given me a chance to make up for my regrets. The moment this realization exploded in my mind, I pinched my arm hard. It hurt. It really hurt. This was no dream. This was actually real. I pulled back the blanket and stepped onto the floor, barefoot. The icy sensation rushed up from the soles of my feet. Unbelievably real. The bronze mirror reflected a youthful face. No wrinkles. No white hair. The eyes were so clear they seemed foreign to me. This was me. From outside the door came the voice of my maid, Chun Ka.
Miss, are you up? The young mistress wants you to come over and choose some clothes. The young mistress.
Guru Yan. Those 3 words felt like a bucket of cold water poured over me. I snapped awake instantly. No. She is not my cousin. I will never call her cousin again. She is Guru Yan. She was the one who made me bear the consequences of her betrothal. She was the one who, despite being betrothed first, had other designs. She was the one who left me in a desperate situation, while she found another way out for herself. I dreamed that she married Prince Jin, yet received no affection, left to guard an empty room alone. Meanwhile, I was stuffed into a bridal sedan and carried into the Marquis of Jinbei's estate, becoming the target of Lu Yunzheng's vented resentment. I will not let her manipulate me again. I took a deep breath, suppressing the surging emotions, changed my clothes, and walked toward the front hall. Along the way, the scenes from my memory overlapped with what was before my eyes. My uncle's house, the Gyu estate, was not very large, but it was exquisitely kept. Guru Yan's courtyard was on the east side, the largest and brightest one. I lived in the side room on the west side. This was arranged when I was brought back to the Gyu family 3 years ago. My uncle, Liu Mingyao, is a 5th grade official. His rank is not high, but he is good at social climbing. My aunt, Lady Wang, does not come from a high background, but she gave birth to a good daughter, which makes her walk with an air of pride. When I arrived at the front hall, the whole family was already gathered. Guru Yan sat beside my aunt, looking down as she toyed with a jade pendant. Hearing footsteps, she looked up at me, the corners of her mouth curving into a smile.
Mingyao is here. Have a seat.
That smile was gentle and proper, leaving no room for criticism. I was once fooled by this very smile, believing she truly saw me as a sister. Cousin, I called out calmly, taking my seat at the very end. My aunt, Lady Wang, was beaming with joy.
Master, the news from the palace is absolutely true. His Highness Prince Jin, indeed, at the flower viewing banquet, fell in love with Ruyan at first sight.
My uncle, Gu Mingyuan, stroked his beard, the pride on his face impossible to conceal.
Since the word came from the princess's manor, how could it be false? His Highness has already petitioned the Emperor, expressing his wish to marry Ruyan as his princess consort.
Father, please stop talking about it.
Yet the gleam in her eyes could not lie. She was absolutely delighted. Of course I knew why she was delighted. Her wedding date with Lu Yunzheng was set for next month. The Marquis of Jinbei's estate was considered prestigious in the capital, but compared to Prince Jin, one was on the ground, while the other was in the heavens. With Prince Jin currently basking in imperial favor, who wouldn't want to marry into his household? Only, pity poor Lu Yunzheng, who was eagerly waiting for his bride to cross his threshold, only to receive news of a broken engagement. No, that is not right. It wasn't a broken engagement. I knew my uncle's calculations all too well. The engagement with the Marquis's estate could not be broken. Breaking it would mean offending them, but they couldn't miss out on the Prince of Jin either. What was the solution? A substitution, to swap Guru Yan with me. That was exactly how it happened before. My uncle and aunt knelt before Guru Yan in wept, saying they couldn't offend the Prince of Jin, and that they needed to give the Marquise's estate an explanation. After all was said and done, it boiled down to one thing.
Mingyao, marry, in your sister's place.
I was naive back then, thinking it was only right to share my sister's burdens. This time, I will never let myself become someone else's substitute again.
Ruyan's marriage must be planned carefully. We cannot directly break the engagement with the Marquise's estate. It would look too bad. Why don't we?
He glanced at me. I was all too familiar with that look. He had looked at me the same way before, as if looking at an object that could be used to fill a gap.
Mingyao, you know the difficulties your cousin is facing. We cannot defy the imperial will regarding the Prince of Jin, nor can we offend the Marquise's estate. If you marry in her place, the Marquise's estate will save face, and your cousin's future will be secured. It is a perfect solution for both sides.
Lu Yan looked up, her eyes welling with tears. She took my hand.
Cousin, I know this is unfair to you, but I really have no other choice.
Her tears flowed on command, an even more convincing performance than before. Don't cry, cousin. I will do as uncle and aunt wish. My uncle and aunt exchanged a glance, both letting out a sigh of relief. Lu Yan also dried her tears, and patted the back of my hand with relief. I smiled obediently, digging my fingernails into my palm. I will listen to you, but this time, I must listen to myself. Back in the side room, I closed the door and called Chungkao over. Go do something for me. Chungkao was a maid I had brought back from the outside. She was a little girl I rescued when I was wandering the streets years ago. She only recognized me as her master, not the Gu family.
Yes, miss. Please tell me.
Go find out if there are any reliable inns outside the city. The more remote, the better. Also, prepare a change of clothes for me. Old ones, so as not to attract attention. Chungkao's eyes widened.
Miss, are you going to?
Don't ask. I pressed her hand down, my voice very soft. This time, I want to walk my own path. That night, I sewed the silver pieces I had saved for half a year into my waistband and hid my travel documents close to my body. Under the cabinet lay a bag of dry rations, which I had quietly traded with the kitchen maid. Everything was ready. I only had to wait for the night before the bridal sedan arrived, to slip out through the back door under the cover of darkness. If Gu Ruyan wanted to marry Prince Jin, let her marry him. If Lu Yunzheng wanted to take a wife, let him take one. The grievances and schemes of these people had nothing to do with me, Liu Mingyao. The moon outside the window was very bright, casting a clear glow over the entire courtyard. I lay in bed, keeping my eyes open until the third watch, and then I heard a scream from the eastern courtyard. The scream was quickly muffled. I rolled over and sat up. I pressed my ear against the wall to listen. From the eastern courtyard, muffled voices could be heard. Something was wrong. My uncle was not at home. He had left for Tengzhou the day before yesterday. Why would there be a man in the manor? I tiptoed to the door and pushed it open. Under the moonlight, I saw a figure entering the manor through the side gate. I was all too familiar with that figure. It was Lu Yunzheng. Broad shoulders, a narrow waist, and a swift, purposeful stride. I had once stared at that very back, harboring resentment for 20 years. Lu Yunzheng. What was he doing here? My bundle was already packed. I had originally planned to slip out the back gate under the cover of night, but now, as if possessed, I stuffed the bundle back under the bed and quietly followed him. He went straight to Gu Ruyan's courtyard, hiding behind a pillar in the corridor. I heard him lower his voice to stop Gu Ruyan from crying out.
Don't scream, it is me.
Lu Yunzheng's voice was kept very low, but I heard it loud and clear. This was the first time I had heard his voice. That familiar sense of irritation surged up again.
My lord, how did you?
I know everything. Your parents plan to have Liu Mingyao marry in your place, don't they?
Then Gu Ruyan said something that made my blood run cold.
What if they are? There is nothing I can do. Since you already know, Lord Marquis, you should understand that this marriage—
Qinghe.
Lu Yunzheng called her by her intimate name.
Listen to me. I know you don't believe me, but I must tell you, I had a very vivid dream. I dreamed that you married the Prince of Jin. After he ascended the throne, he made you his noble consort, but he never touched you. You begged him to spare your father, but he refused. Your father was ultimately thrown into prison.
Lu Yunfeng spoke, word by word, with absolute certainty.
Marry me, and I won't let you suffer like that.
My lord, what are you talking about? It was just a dream. How can you take it seriously?
The dream was too real. So real that I feel the heavens are warning me. But tomorrow, I will not let the Gu family switch brides. When the bridal sedan chair arrives at the Gu residence, I will personally lift the veil. If it isn't you, I will humiliate the Gu family in public. When that time comes, would the Prince of Jin still want a woman whose betrothal was publicly broken by the Marquise's estate?
My blood ran cold. In my past life, he only realized the bride had been switched after the sedan chair entered his estate. To save face, he didn't throw a tantrum then, but vented all his anger on me afterward. This time, he was planning ahead. To plug this loophole, Guru Yan fell silent. She was hesitating. Her shadow on the window paper flickered. She seemed to be shrinking back.
My lord, don't force me.
I am not forcing you, Ching He. I know your heart lies with the Prince of Jin, but his interest in you is merely a passing whim. Trust me just this once. Just this once.
He spoke with such sincerity. Did he used to coax me like this too? No. He couldn't even be bothered to coax me. Yet, to Guru Yan, he was willing to speak on bended knee. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. Lu Yunzheng spoke again.
If she wants to marry in her sister's place, let her. Either way, I won't marry her. I've already made arrangements to marry her off to the nephew of the Vice Minister of Works. He is a notorious playboy in the capital. Doesn't she love easing other people's burdens? Let her have her fill of it.
I suddenly stepped out from behind the pillar. Lu Yunzheng, what right do you have to arrange my life? He whipped his head around, his eyes widening for a brief second. In the next instant, the shock in his eyes turned into realization. A cold sneer curled his lips.
So you dreamed of it too.
He looked me up and down.
Life in that dream must have been quite miserable, wasn't it?
I was trembling with rage, yet my lips curved into a smile. Still better than you. In this life, you still won't get to marry Guru Yan. She wants to be the Princess of Jin. Who do you think you are?
Liu Mingyao. Why are you acting so tough? In the dream, you married me. Now, you still have to marry the man I chose for you. Did you think you could escape?
I will escape. Just watch me.
Do you think you can?
Is it any of your business? The two of us stood like two beasts in a standoff, glaring at each other.
You two, what are you talking about? What dream? What on earth did you dream about?
Neither of us paid her any attention. Lu Yunzheng suddenly smiled. He took a step closer, his voice lowered so only I could hear.
Liu Mingyao, you'd better not fall into my hands. Otherwise.
I tilted my head up and said to him, don't worry. I would rather spend my entire life alone than ever step into your bridal sedan. With that, I turned and left immediately. I didn't even take my bundle of belongings. I bolted straight for the back gate, but I crashed right into a firm chest. Looking up, it was Lu Yunfeng. I didn't know when he had circled around to the front, deliberately blocking my path. The moonlight shone on his face, and in his eyes was an emotion I couldn't quite read. Move aside.
Before I could finish my sentence, what is the rush?
His posture was lazy, like a cat playing with a mouse.
Liu Mingyao, there are some accounts we need to settle clearly.
I have nothing to settle with you.
We tortured each other for 20 years. You hate me, and I hate you too. But those 20 years were ultimately wasted on a single marriage certificate. I don't want to marry you again. And you don't want to marry me either, right?
Of course.
Then that makes things easy. Tell your family that you won't marry in her place, and I will go call off the engagement myself.
Would you really be so kind?
Of course I have a condition.
Just as I thought.
What condition? Your future marriage will be decided by me. Whomever I tell you to marry, you must marry.
By what right?
By the right that your uncle currently needs a favor from me. The Go family wants to latch onto the influential Prince of Jin, yet they dare not offend the Marquis of Zhenbei's estate. As long as I don't agree to call off the engagement, Guru Yan can forget about marrying the Prince of Jin. For his daughter's sake, your uncle would agree to anything.
He was right. For the sake of Ru Yan's future, Uncle wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice my lifelong happiness, let alone agree to a single condition. Aren't you afraid I'll tell Prince Jin?
Go ahead and tell him. Prince Jin only has eyes for Guru Yan right now. Do you think he'd believe you? Besides, you're an unmarried young lady, meeting me in the middle of the night to negotiate terms. Who would suffer more if word got out?
I clenched my teeth. This man had always been an expert at manipulating people, and he had only gotten worse. Fine, but you must guarantee that you won't make me marry someone completely absurd.
Don't worry. The person I choose will certainly be a match for you.
Early the next morning, Uncle went to the Marquis of Zhenbei's estate. I didn't know what Lu Yunzheng said to him. Only that Uncle returned with a grim expression, yet he still nodded in agreement.
Mingyao.
Aunt called me over, her smile looking worse than a sob.
The Marquis said, the engagement can be broken, but your future marriage must be arranged by him.
Guru Yan stood nearby with her head bowed, not saying a word. Of course she wouldn't say anything. It wasn't the first time I was being sacrificed. I lowered my eyes, my voice calm. I will follow Uncle and Aunt's arrangements.
Good child. Aunt knows you've been wronged. The Marquis said, the family he chooses for you won't be bad.
Won't be bad. That very afternoon, the news arrived. Aunt's expression was 10 times worse than it had been in the morning. She looked at me with a hint of guilt in her eyes.
Mingyao, the family the Marquise chose for you is the nephew of Lord Xiao, the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Works. His surname is Wang. He owns several shops in the capital, so his family is quite well off. It is just
what?
It is just that this man is not very suitable to be a husband.
I didn't even have to guess to know what not very suitable meant. Sure enough, the Xiao family sent someone over the next day for a matchmaking meeting. He was a merchant's son in his 30s. His speech was somewhat vulgar, and his mind was entirely set on clinging to the powerful and influential. What he fancied was never me as a person, but rather the prestige of being related to the Guyu family. Sitting in the pavilion, before we had even exchanged many words, he already exuded a strong air of worldly opportunism. Sitting behind the screen, I let out a silent sigh. So this was the good family Lu Yunzheng had chosen for me. He was no longer entangling himself with me. Instead, he chose to humiliate me in this manner. After seeing off the visitor from the Xiao family,
Mingyao, how about I go and speak to the Marquise again?
There is no need. Let it be this family. My aunt left, looking as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. I closed the door, leaned against it, and slowly slid down to sit on the floor. The moonlight outside the window was beautiful. Just like last night, I dragged my bundle out and patted the dust off it. My plan to escape had to be moved forward. The day of the matchmaking meeting was very sunny. My aunt wanted me to dress decently, but I deliberately chose a half-worn dress. After all, what that man named Wang fancied was the title of the second miss of the Gue family, not me as a person. Tea and pastries were set out in the pavilion. I sat up straight and proper, waiting for the man to arrive. When the sound of footsteps approached, I instinctively clenched my handkerchief. Led in by a servant, the man entered, bowing and exchanging pleasantries the moment we met. Every other word out of his mouth was about Prince Jin and the Marquis of Jembe, as if the one he was marrying wasn't me, but the prominent relatives behind me. Holding my teacup, I responded half-heartedly, while mentally calculating which escape route would be the safest. As the meeting was drawing to a close, a familiar figure stepped out from behind the moon gate. Lu Yunzheng. He was dressed in a dark brocade robe, fluttering a folding fan in his hand as he strolled over unhurriedly, a meaningful smile playing on his lips.
Oh, having a matchmaking meeting.
He leaned sideways against a pillar, his gaze sweeping back and forth between me and the man.
Young Master Wang, how do you find my cousin?
Recognizing him as the Marquis of Jembe, the man quickly stood up to bow, so eager that he nearly tripped.
Second Miss Gu is wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Of course she is.
Lu Yunzheng smiled even more broadly, yet his eyes were fixed on me.
This cousin of mine is graceful in the parlor and skilled in the kitchen, and her personality is exceptionally straightforward. You are a lucky man, young Master Wang.
You seem quite free today, Marquis. To have the time to watch other people's matchmaking.
Just passing by.
He snapped his fan shut and took 2 steps closer.
The man I chose is quite good, isn't he? A perfect match for you.
He is indeed good. I smiled gently. I think he is also a great match for you, Marquis. How about I put in a good word for you with young Master Wang? Lu Yunzheng's face darkened. The man didn't hear clearly and craned his neck to ask.
What did you say, second miss?
Nothing. I stood up. Young Master Wang, let's end today's meeting here. My aunt is still waiting for my reply. I turned to leave. Lu Yunzheng suddenly reached out to block my path.
Liu Mingyao, you can't run away. Just marry him obediently, and that will be...
His words caught in his throat, because outside the moon gate behind him, someone walked in slowly from the side gate. He had a tall, slender figure, and walked with a calm, unhurried pace. His gaze swept across the courtyard, as if he had just strolled in by chance, but his commanding presence instantly silenced everyone in the courtyard. Lu Yunzheng's face turned pale instantly. Before I could react, the man had already walked up to me. Against the light, I saw his face clearly, with sharply defined eyebrows and bright eyes, a high-bridged nose, and slightly pursed thin lips. His almond eyes held a clear, bright light. He carried a faint scent of agarwood, clean and pleasant. It was Xiao Yan, Prince of Jin, but unlike the emperor in the palace who used to have hazy, drunken eyes, and always hesitated to speak, the youth before me was high-spirited, with a fearless energy between his brows. He looked at me, and the tips of his ears slowly turned red.
Miss Ga, we meet again.
I opened my mouth, not knowing what to say. He came to the Gu family's residence, but shouldn't he be looking for Gu Ruyan? Xiao Yan's gaze passed over me and landed on Lu Yunzheng. His gaze changed instantly. The gentleness with which he had looked at me just now was completely swept away, replaced, instead, by a condescending coldness.
Lu Yunzheng,
He called him by his full name.
what are you doing here?
Lu Yunzheng had already dropped to one knee.
Your servant pays respects to your highness.
The marriage agreement between the Gui family and the Marquise's estate, has it not already been called off?
Yes, it has been called off.
Then what are you still doing here?
Lu Yunzheng grit his teeth.
Your servant was just passing by.
Passing by.
Xiao Yan raised an eyebrow.
To pass by the Guillot family's backyard, all the way from the Marquis of Genbei's estate. That is quite a detour.
Lu Yunzheng's face turned ashen. He prostrated himself on the ground, not daring to look up. Xiao Yan looked down at him. After a moment of silence, he suddenly said,
I do not wish to see you continuing to pester Miss Lu.
Miss Liu, not Miss Gu. That was me. Liu Mingyao. Lu Yunzheng snapped his head up, then quickly lowered it again.
Your servant would not dare. Your servant has nothing to do with the second Miss Lu.
It is best if you do not.
Xiao Yan withdrew his gaze.
Dismissed.
Lu Yunzheng stood up. Before leaving, he cast a glance at me. In that glance, there was shock, there was confusion, and there was also something inexplicable. He left through the side gate. Only Xiao Yan and I were left in the pavilion, along with the bewildered young Master Wang. Xiao Yan turned to look at me. His gaze shifted back again. So warm and gentle, he didn't seem like a prince at all.
Miss Liu. That person just now, you need not pay him any mind.
He paused, the tips of his ears turning even redder.
I have something I wish to say to you in private.
I stood frozen in place, my mind a complete muddle. Why would Prince Jin come to the Gu household? Shouldn't he be looking for Guru Yan? Why would he come looking for me? Before Xiao Yan could speak his mind, my uncle came running from the front courtyard, followed closely by my aunt and Guru Yan. The three of them were panting heavily, their faces flushed red, as they fell to their knees in unison.
Your Highness's arrival. Your servant has failed to welcome you properly.
Xiao Yan's brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. He took half a step to the side, declining to accept my uncle's full bow. His voice was indifferent as he said,
Rise. I am traveling incognito. There is no need for such grand etiquette.
My uncle stood up tremblingly, beads of sweat rolling down his forehead. My aunt was even more dramatic. Kneeling on the ground, she kowtowed twice in succession before being helped up. Guru Yan, kneeling at the very back, slowly raised her head. Her attire today was brand new. She wore a pale orchid-colored gown, and in her hair, she had pinned a pure gold step shake hairpin. The hanging tassels swayed gently with her movements. The powder on her face was applied in a thin, delicate layer, her eyes full of tender affection, and her lips touched with rouge. She knew Prince Jin was coming. The news had come from the palace. Prince Jin had sent a formal request, saying he wanted to visit the Guyu family. My uncle's hands were shaking when he received the request. My aunt had turned Guru Yan's wardrobe completely upside down, picking out the most expensive jewelry to put in her hair. But now, on Guru Yan's meticulously prepared face, her smile was freezing up bit by bit, because Xiao Yan wasn't looking at her. From the moment my uncle stood up until now, Xiao Yan's gaze had remained fixed on me. My aunt noticed this and tried to smooth things over, saying,
Your Highness, this is my daughter, Ruyan, at the flower viewing banquet last time.
I know.
his tone polite but distant.
Miss Gu is well known for her talents. I have long heard of her.
After saying this, he looked back at me. This look was far too direct. My aunt's smile completely crumbled. Guru Yan's face went pale for a moment, but she quickly forced a smile again.
Your Highness's visit to the Guillot family. Is there something you wish to instruct us with?
I came to see someone.
Everyone's eyes instantly shot toward me. My uncle's lips trembled as he squeezed out a smile that looked worse than crying.
Your Highness knows Mingyao.
I do.
Xiao Yan did not avoid his gaze.
We met 10 years ago.
My uncle's face instantly turned pale. I didn't know how I managed to walk into the main hall. Xiao Yan took the seat of honor. My uncle sat beside him to accompany him. My aunt and Guru Yan sat in the lower seats. I was arranged to sit opposite Xiao Yan. Across the short distance, I could clearly see his Adam's apple move as he drank his tea. Guru Yan desperately tried to find things to talk about, chatting about interesting anecdotes from the flower viewing banquet, and sharing the latest gossip from the palace. Her voice was sweet and soft. Xiao Yan responded politely, but after each reply, his gaze would return to me. It was a strange feeling, as if I were wrapped in something, warm and cozy, yet making my heart flutter. I lowered my head to sip my tea, the tea reflecting my flushed face. Half an hour later, Xiao Yan stood up to take his leave. My uncle offered to see him out, but he raised a hand to stop him.
I have a few words I'd like to say to second Miss Liu in private.
These words were like a pebble thrown into the water, sending ripples outward. Guru Yan clenched her handkerchief tightly. My aunt opened her mouth but closed it again. My uncle froze in place, not daring to move. Xiao Yan led me to a quiet spot in the backyard. There was no one around, only the rustling of bamboo leaves in the wind. He stopped walking, turned around, and looked at me. In those phoenix eyes, there was no aloof nobility, only a kind of cautious anticipation.
Miss Liu,
Yes?
do you really not remember me?
I was stunned for a moment. What? He took a step closer to me, his voice dropping lower, as if afraid of disturbing something.
When we were 6 years old, in the dry well.
The dry well. Those words were like a key, suddenly unlocking a dusty door deep within my memory. 6 years old, the enemy army attacking the city. Horses startled in the middle of the night. The dry well. A boy covered in mud, huddled in the well, shivering with fear. His eyes lit up for a brief moment when he saw me. You are that little boy. The corners of Xiao Yan's mouth curved upward, forming a beautiful smile.
You finally remember.
My mind was buzzing.
Before the enemy soldiers pulled you up from the dry well, you threw down a pouch. There were sweets inside the pouch and a note. On it, the word Yao was written in crooked handwriting. After peace was restored, I had people search the entire city for you. But the portrait the Liu family submitted depicted someone else. Her face was rounder than yours, and her eyes were larger than yours. She didn't look like you at all. I searched for 10 years. At the flower viewing banquet, I saw you arguing with someone behind the rockery. The word Yao was embroidered on your sleeve, with an orchid embroidered next to it. The embroidery style was exactly the same as on the pouch back then. I thought it was Gu Ruyan. Because the Liu family claimed to the public that the daughter who was lost and then found was Liu Ruyan. At the flower viewing banquet, I stared at her for a long time, always feeling that something was off. That day when you mended my clothes, I saw the scar on your finger. It was scratched by a stone in the dry well back then. I remember it. I finally realized I had found the wrong person.
He raised his hand, seeming as if he wanted to hold my hand. His hand paused in midair, and then he withdrew it.
That letter inviting me to the tea house was not written by you. It was Gu Ruyan. I thought it was you. I thought you remembered me too. I was so happy I couldn't sleep all night. Later, I figured it all out. Your uncle claimed the credit that wasn't his and told everyone that you were Gu Ruyan. The portraits the Gue family submitted over those years weren't of you either. Mingyao, I've been looking for you for 10 years. Will you marry me, please?
That night, I didn't close my eyes at all that night. Lying in bed, I kept thinking about what Xiao Yan had said, and then I thought of the dream I had. Everything in that dream actually fit perfectly with his obsession with finding me. At the imperial banquets, he would always drink heavily. The corners of his eyes flushed red. I used to think he was worried about state affairs, but thinking back now, those eyes were clearly looking in the direction where I was sitting. When we met by chance at Taie Pond, his tone was so gentle and submissive. He asked if the Marquis of Dingen treated me well. He made an exception to bestow upon me the title of first-class noble consort. When he presented the jade Ruyi scepter, he looked as if he had just been crying. I buried my face in my pillow. Fortunately, this time, I still have the chance to respond to him properly. As dawn was just breaking, hurried footsteps came from outside the door. Chunkao came stumbling in.
Miss, someone from the palace is here with an imperial decree. The whole family has been ordered to go out and kneel to receive it.
I sat up abruptly. My aunt's shrieks came from the eastern courtyard.
Ruyan's imperial decree. Ruyan's imperial decree has arrived. Quick, change Ruyan's clothes.
Gu Ruyan emerged from her room, surrounded by maidservants. The hairpins and ornaments on her head jingled. Her face was caked with 3 layers of powder, and her red lips were so bright they looked ready to drip blood. As she passed by my door, she paused for a moment. She glanced at me. In that glance, there was smugness, contempt, and a trace of charity, like pity.
Sister, help me see later. What is written in the imperial decree?
I said nothing. The whole family knelt in the courtyard. My uncle knelt at the very front, his forehead pressed against the blue bricks, his entire body trembling. My aunt knelt behind my uncle, and Gu Ruyan knelt right in the middle. The eunuch unfurled the imperial decree, his voice sharp and drawn out.
By heaven's mandate, the daughter of the Liu family, gentle and virtuous, is hereby appointed as the primary consort of Prince Jin.
Gu Ruyan leaned forward.
The second daughter of the Liu family, Mingyao, respect this.
The courtyard fell silent for a moment. Gu Ruyan's movement froze, like a puppet with its strings cut.
Did you read it wrong?
I have read imperial decrees for 30 years and have never read one wrong. If Lord Gu does not believe it, see for yourself.
The imperial decree was thrust into my uncle's arms, but his hands shook too much to catch it. The imperial decree fell to the ground and rolled twice. Gu Ruyan snatched it up, her eyes quickly scanning every word, her face turning from pale to green.
Impossible.
She stood up abruptly, her voice as sharp as a knife.
How could it be her? The one His Highness Prince Jin wants to marry is me.
The imperial decree writes it clearly. Mingyao, the second daughter of the Liu family, if you have any dissatisfaction, go speak to His Highness.
She must have used some tricks. It must be her. She made a fool of me on purpose.
Shut up. Do you want to bring ruin upon the entire family?
Gu Ruyan froze in place, looking at her mother in disbelief. Tears welled up and spilled over, ruining the makeup on her face and streaming down her chin. My uncle knelt on the ground, his eyes staring blankly, muttering repeatedly.
How can this be?
I stood up, and calmly accepted the imperial decree.
His Highness asked me to pass a message to the second Miss Gu, the sachet from the dry well. He still has it.
My eyes grew hot with tears. From the corner of my eye, behind the moon gate, a figure flashed by. Lu Yunzheng. I didn't know when he had arrived, nor how long he had been standing there. He stared fixedly at the imperial decree in my hand, his Adam's apple bobbing up and down, his lips trembling, yet he couldn't make a sound. Even to his death, he never knew that the one Xiao Yan had always been looking at was me. Those rewards, that concern, and those moments of hesitation, none of them had anything to do with him. He had been obsessed for 2 lifetimes, but in the end, he had found the wrong person. I withdrew my gaze, holding the imperial decree, and walked back to my side room, step by step. Gu Ruyan's crying did not stop for a long time. I did not look back. On the day I entered the palace, I wore plain, simple clothes. Xiao Yan was waiting for me at the palace gate. Seeing my attire, he said nothing, only squeezed my hand gently.
Let's go.
The emperor met me in the imperial study, and the empress was there too. Their eyes were slightly red, looking at me with heartache. I knelt down and kowtowed 3 times, hard. Father, mother, I beg you to seek justice for me. Xiao Yan tried to help me up, but I didn't move. I told them everything that happened in the dry well, from beginning to end. The year the enemy army besieged the city, I rescued a little boy from the well. My biological father abandoned me to flee for his own life. Because of this, I wandered the streets for 10 years. Back then, His Majesty ordered the Imperial Guard to search the city. The portrait Gu Mingyao submitted was not of me. I took out a copy of that portrait from my sleeve. The person in the portrait was Gu Ruyan. The emperor's face darkened. The empress picked up the portrait, took a look, and took a deep breath.
It indeed doesn't look like her. Mingyao has a sharper chin, and her eyes aren't this big.
Gu Mingyao falsely claimed credit and deceived His Majesty for 10 years. For these 10 years, he boasted to the outside world about his merit in saving the crown. The evidence was presented one by one. Account books, letters, and witnesses. Xiao Yan had already investigated and prepared everything for me. There was a long silence.
Gu Mingyao. Gu Ruyan.
Father, I have one request. Father looked at me.
Speak.
Gu Yan and Lu Yunzheng, the Marquis of Zhenbei, had a marriage agreement long ago. Due to a twist of fate, they failed to marry. I beg Father to fulfill their wish, allowing the lovers to finally be together, and also giving her a place to settle down and live. The hall fell silent for a moment. The Empress raised her eyebrows slightly. The corners of Xiao Yan's mouth curled up slightly. He understood what I meant. It was to return her to her original position, and to settle all scores between her and me, so we could each live our own lives. If Gu Ruyan wanted to be the Princess of Jin, she shouldn't have used deception. Lu Yunzheng wanted to manipulate my marriage, but he already had a prior engagement with Gu Ruyan, so he should bear the consequences himself. Father pondered for a moment. Granted. The day the news reached the Goyu family, Gu Ruyan's wailing could be heard down the entire street.
I won't marry Lu Yunzheng. His Highness, the Prince of Jin. His Highness was clearly going to marry me.
My aunt collapsed on the ground, her eyes vacant.
It is all over.
I stood outside the Gu residence, watching the Imperial Guard seize the estate. Chests of gold, silver, and jewels were carried out. The pure gold hair tassel with butterfly and moon shadow designs was among them. The item the Empress had bestowed upon me back then had been hidden away by Gu Ruyan for 3 years. When the officers dragged Yu Ruyan out of her room, her voice was already hoarse from crying.
Liu Mingyao, you ruined me. You ruined me.
I took a step back and looked at her calmly. Coming to this point is entirely the result of your own choices. What was obtained through deception must eventually be returned. Take care of yourself from now on. My words completely silenced her. She gaped, unable to utter a sound. On the day Lu Yunzheng came for the wedding, his expression was incredibly complex. Sitting on his horse, his eyes stared straight at me. He wasn't looking at Gu Ruyan. He was looking at me.
Liu Mingyao, this move of yours was truly ruthless.
You must be joking, Marquis. I am merely letting everything return to its proper course. The affection between you and my cousin should not have been delayed by me. When the bridal sedan was lifted, Gu Ruyan was still crying inside. Lu Yunzheng rode his horse at the front, never once looking back. Firecrackers exploded, and red paper scraps filled the air. I watched for a moment, then turned and walked away. Behind me, Chengkao came jogging to catch up.
Miss, His Highness is waiting for you at the entrance of the alley.
The sunlight was just right, warming the entire long street. Xiao Yan stood by the carriage, holding grapes in his hand.
Let's go. Let's go home.
On the day of our grand wedding, the bridal dowry stretched for miles. The bridal sedan departed from the palace and made a full circle around the most bustling streets of the capital, with music playing and drums beating. Red silk fluttered everywhere. The common people crowded the roadsides to watch the spectacle, saying that the Prince of Jin's wedding was even grander than the crown prince's back then. When the bridal veil was lifted, Xiao Yan stared at me for a very long time, as if to confirm that this was not a dream. His eyes were slightly red.
I won't make a mistake. This time, I won't make a mistake.
A new batch of grapes from the western regions had arrived, glistening, purple, and plump. Xiao Yan personally peeled one and held it to my lips.
Have a taste.
I opened my mouth and took it. It was so sweet that I was stunned for a moment. In the past, at the Gu household, the best of everything always belonged to Guru Yan. By the time grapes were sent to my room, they were already withered and shriveled, falling off the stems. I would pick them up and eat them, thinking that was what sweetness tasted like, but it wasn't. Fresh grapes are supposed to taste like this. Seeing my eyes well up with tears, Xiao Yan thought they were too sour for me. He quickly peeled another one.
This one is sweet. Have a taste.
Our daily life after marriage was very simple. He went to court, and I waited for him to return at the manor. Sometimes he would sneak back early, bringing a bag of roasted chestnuts, still warm from being tucked inside his robe. For the first time, I realized what it felt like to be held dear. At the very center of someone's heart. It wasn't charity, nor was it guilt. Nor was it since no one else wants you anyway. It was I only want you. As time went on, I gradually heard news from the Marquis of Zhenbei's manor. Guru Yan and Lu Yunzheng fought bitterly at first, complaining about everything and clashing at every turn. But life had to go on. After grinding through more than half a year, the two of them seemed to have found a way to get along. The frequency of replacing broken porcelain in the manor grew less and less. I heard that after Guru Yan became pregnant, her temperament quieted down a lot. I didn't deliberately pry, but when I heard Chengka mention it, my heart suddenly felt very peaceful. Their lives finally had nothing to do with me anymore, and my life had only just begun. When the news reached us, Xiao Yan was peeling water caltrops for me. After listening, he looked up at me, seeming to want to say something.
You are much more peaceful about this than I expected.
Everyone has their own fate, and everyone walks their own path. My life is going so well now. I can't be bothered to waste my energy on the past. He sighed, pushed the peeled water caltrops over, his eyes filled with helplessness and indulgence. Outside the window, the crabapples were in full bloom, and the wind carried a sweet fragrance. So this is what it feels like to be loved.
What is it like?
Like grapes. Sweet, so very sweet. And you don't have to pick up what others left behind. He fell silent for a moment, pulled me into his arms, and rested his chin on the top of my head.
From now on every year, the fresh ones, the very first batch, will all be yours.
In the 3rd month after our marriage, Xiao Yan dug out an old box from the study. It was made of wood, with corners worn smooth and shiny, clearly having been touched for many years. He opened the box, and inside lay a faded old purse. The fabric had already turned yellow, and several embroidery threads were broken. You kept it all this time.
I kept it all this time, the one you threw down back then. I ate the candy, but I couldn't bear to throw away the purse. Inside, there was a line of small writing that read, Yao Yao's candy, be happy when you eat it.
I burst out laughing, but as I laughed, my tears began to fall. Xiao Yan reached out to wipe away my tears, though his own eyes had also turned red.
That year in the dry well,
I thought I was going to die.
Then you appeared. You leaned over the edge of the well and looked down. Don't be afraid, I'll save you, Mingyao. The light I saw when I looked up from that dry well was you.
I threw myself into his arms, crying so hard I couldn't speak.
I searched for you for 10 years. You are not allowed to lose it again in this lifetime.
I nodded vigorously, burying my face in his chest. The moonlight from the dry well, after 10 years, finally shone upon both of us. Fortunately, this time,
we both found the right person.